Chapter 5, Glamsehath, Crest Bestowal Ceremony. After the inspection, servicing, and repairs that followed their familiarization voyages, the 12 raid ships formed a single column, flying in the vicinity of the Star of Avriel. At the head of the pack was the Raychaeusek Doriak, Commandant's ship, the Limcob. Just because the Commandant was aboard the Limcob did not make it the flagship. The reason behind this confusing appellation was that Trampleblitz Squadron 1 had yet to be officially established. The Flickob, Sobash's ship, was second in line, flying behind the Limcob. Eventually, a patrol ship approached the line of raid ships. It was the Glagak Glagalaker, Star Force's flagship, and the Ruhrer, Imperial Empress's ship, the Goffnosh. The Goffnosh was of great ceremonial significance, but that was not all. If the imperial capital ever threatened to become a war zone, then the Empress would board it and lead the Watchguard fleet to battle. The ship was no mere ornament. It was the ship slated to fight when the hour was most dire for the Empire. As such, it was customary for the designation to fall on the most state-of-the-art patrol ship of the times. The Goffnosh was currently a Ka-class ship, and Empress Lama's was, at present, a board ship. "Preparations are complete, I trust," came Ados Raiwa's voice, reverberating through the bridge. "Soon we'll be honored with a Crest banner. If anybody here doesn't take pride in their being here to bear witness, then keep it to yourself until after the ceremony's over. I'm trembling with excitement, and if someone were to ruin the mood for me, I vow to make mincemeat of their tongue for the cats to snack on." Whenever a new squadron or subfleet was formed, the Empress herself bestowed the Crest banner. Such was the Star Force's tradition during peacetime. During a period of war, innumerable squadrons had to be formed, and not always at the capital. The Empress could hardly afford to fly around the galaxy personally granting a Crest banner to each one. Usually, Rutazaic, Imperial Envoy, would do it in her stead, even for subfleets, let alone for squadrons. That the Crest bestowal ceremony was being conducted as though it were peacetime was a sign of the hopes they were placing in Trampleblitz Squadron 1 as a pillar of the Empire. None could blame Ados Raiwa, who'd been chosen as the first commandant of this momentous squadron, for feeling honored. The Limcob veered to face the Goffnosh. "All ships, with great respect, ought you to entrust control to the Goffnosh. First, the Limcob must prepare for external control and conduct an information link with the Empress's ship. This is the Goffnosh. Information link online. This is the Limcob. With reverence towards Her Majesty the Empress do we relinquish the right of control. This is the Goffnosh. The Limcob is now under this ship's control." It went without saying that giving up control functions, such as piloting and weapons control, to another meant waiving the ship's independence. Doing so was, to the Av, the deepest show of respect there was. Following Ados Raiwa's commands, each of the ships took it in turn to entrust control to the Goffnosh. Soon, it was the Flickoba's turn. "Information link with the Goffnosh complete," reported the communications officer. Sabash input the Sage Sarer, ship commander's key code, switching the ship to external control mode. An ominous warning sound notified them that important functions such as steering, weapons control, and communications were no longer accepting input from within the ship. Now the Flickob moved as the Empress's ship directed, irrespective of the will of the crew. Deca Commander Idlia jokingly raised up his hands in surrender, but it was out of place. Before long, all ships had shifted to the Empress's ship's control. The single column then broke into cylindrical formation, after which the raid ships were made to fire up their reverse thrusters and kill their speed relative to the Goffnosh, which also decelerated. Shortly before entering the cylinder of ships, it ejected a cargo pod from the back. When the patrol ship did enter the cylinder, the difference in relative speed between it and the ships making up the cylinder was near zero. Slowly, the 12 raid ships passed the Imperial flagship by. "Communication from the Goffnosh flowing into the ship's memory net," shouted the communications officer, Rearguard Yatesh, excitedly. No need to get so worked up, thought Sabash. Though he was probably just trying to liven the mood, seeing as there was nothing for them to do. "It's the processing system instructions. The crypto mode is Seiseruk Eurasian J. Seiseruk was used throughout the Star Forces. It was the level of confidentiality only those of ship commander rank or above were allowed to decipher. Sabash inserted the password and decoded the message. From Glaher Byrer Clayer, Training Fleet Commander-in-Chief, 4. Ship Commander of the Raid Ship Flickob, starting with receipt of this order, your ship officially belongs to Trampleblitz Squadron 1. The processing system you received in tandem with this directive is for the construction and decryption of the crypto mode meant for Trampleblitz Squadron 1, named Kamrinik, Hamazari Plant. Act as a member of the Star Forces is expected to. The communications officer continued, the processing system has been automatically planted into the CompuCrystal network. This ceremony had taken place quietly, through the CompuCrystal networks of all of the raid ships. A communication from the Gofnosh for all crew members, reported Rearguard Yatesh. The video will be shown through the main screen and open screens, and the audio will be transmitted through the onboard speakers. Sabash got to his feet. All bridge personnel, stand up. All other crew members should listen in awe to the extent their current duties allow them to. Empress Lamas appeared on the main screen. She was seated on the Jade Throne, the counterpart of the one in the audience chamber. The Rugahor, Empress's bridge, was around the same level of importance as the audience chamber at the Imperial Palace, so the emperors of Imperial history had come to think, through the ages. Lama spoke. The Training Fleet Commander-in-Chief tells us they've received the automated replies from the CompuCrystal nets of all of the raid ships, informing us that your orders have been received. With this, Trampleblitz Squadron 1 now exists on paper. As to whether it exists in reality, that rests on the blood, sweat, and tears you shed into shaping it. We do not know whether creating this new type of ship, this raid ship, was a wise idea. We simply hope you will prove to us that it was. If only we could. She cast her eyes down, a listless finger touching the circlet that was molded in the likeness of the eight-headed Gofnosh. If only we could, we would have liked to verify the true worth of the raid ships alongside you. Instead, we shall envy you and wait for good tidings. They heard Ados Raiwa speak on behalf of the squadron's crews. It is truly uplifting to be the object of your Majesty's envy. We shall strive hard so that, when news of our squadron's deeds makes it to your Majesty's ears, the fires of your jealousy shall singe the Jade Throne. Then go. Go, before we grow tired of the sheer comfortableness of the Jade Throne, said Lamas, a bitter smile on her lips. Trampleblitz Squadron 1 shall proceed forth, in humble compliance, with your Imperial command. Lamas gave a slight nod, and as soon as the feed cut out, the right of control returned to the ship. At that moment, the Gofnosh had almost entirely overtaken the cylinder formation made up of raid ships. The Imperial flagship then accelerated at a dash, almost as though the Empress wanted to shake away any lingering feelings of attachment. The raid ships maintained their current courses and speed, with the Limcob as the sole exception. It slowly picked up speed in order to retrieve the cargo pod that the Empress's ship had ejected. I obtained the Crest banner, came Ados Raiwa's message, its design appearing on the main screen. The emblem of Trampleblitz Squadron 1 was the numeral 1 on a cob, venomous serpent. From here on out, we'll be training to hone our group battle maneuvers. All ships head for the Elish portal. Trampleblitz Squadron 1 reverted to the single-column formation, with the Limcob once again at the fore. Together, they made for one of the 8 portals that revolved in close proximity to the imperial capital of Lokvakar. I want to hold a meeting before we enter planar space, said Ados Raiwa. We won't need to gather together. Each ship commander is to open the confidential line in their quarters. Let's set the meeting to start at 1800 capital time. Sabash had an orbital building of his own in the capital. If one were to search for a room in that mansion house of equal size to the captain's quarters of a Cobb-class ship, it would have to be the toy garage next to the children's room. Yet Sabash had come to like this little room. It was cramped, but functional, and it was bigger than the captain's quarters of a supply ship. Best of all, it was nice and new. The mansion at the capital was built expressly for raising children. The days he spent with his 2 kids were more precious memories than the voyages of the most profitable merchant vessels in the history of commerce in the Empire, but now they were full-grown adults. Were he to return, he'd find only the maintenance automatons whirring more quietly than a bed of flowers. Sabash sat down in his black leather chair and glanced at his wrist gear's time display. Shortly before 18 o'clock, he opened the confidential line. Window screens popped open one after the other, and by precisely 18, Commandant Ados Raiwa and the 12 ship commanders were assembled. "About the space for our tactical exercises," started Ados Raiwa, without preamble. "I was hoping for an astrobase somewhere." "Sounds reasonable," said Durek, ship commander of the Batcab. An astrobase had everything ships needed, including resupply facilities, repair and construction shipyards, and recreation spots. As such, the best place to square off against one another was the planar space near the portals that led to an astrobase. That being said, Military Command Headquarters is ordering us to train at the Countdom of Hyde. The other ship commanders couldn't hide their confusion. It seemed they all knew about the Countdom. It was exceedingly famous as a territory nation on the very outskirts of the galactic map. Discovering a human society after such a long stretch of isolation had made quite the stir, and it was also the star system that was the cause for this war, albeit only as a pretext. Sabash knew too, of course. Hyde was the star fief of a comrade with whom he'd fought side by side. Mind, he had no idea why they had to be training in that Countdom. He kept silent, thinking Commandant Ados Raiwa was bound to explain it all. The other ship commanders didn't say anything either, awaiting the Commandant's elucidation. Yet Ados Raiwa appeared to be waiting for someone to ask why, so, sighing inwardly, Sabash reluctantly took it upon himself. "Why are we to train at the Countdom of Hyde, ma'am? It can't be undiluted training there, surely." "Ostensibly, we were given one reason," she said. "Military Command HQ wants us to do training exercises that are a step above what I was expecting. They want us honing our strategy, not our tactics. Our training assignment is as follows." A window screen showing the planar space map of the Elish monarchy appeared. The Elish monarchy was peculiarly shaped, compared to its fellows in the 8 monarchies. It was circular. On the map, 2 points were flashing on the circle, the distance between them almost equal to the diameter of the circle. "As you know, the Hyde portal is the farthest from the Elish portal," she explained. "In other words, the time it takes to get there is near enough the same, whether you go clockwise or counterclockwise." 2 luminous dotted lines extended from both sides of the Elish portal, following the curve of the Elish monarchy until they reached the point of light that represented the Countdom of Hyde on the opposite end of the circle. In short, the squadron will be split into 2 groups, which will compete to gain control over the Hyde portal faster than the other. Then, whichever of the 2 couldn't take it fast enough must attempt to recapture it. That's our training assignment. The Countdom of Hyde was chosen due to the unique topography. No other territory nation affords us the same opportunity. Usually, there's only one shortest route to anywhere from Lokfakar. In Elish, we can have a fair race. Presumably, the Countdom of Hyde will be the place where newly born ships come of age in the future, too. If that's the ostensible reason, then do you think there's an ulterior reason, ma'am? Offered Sabash. That's right, she said, drawing up her shoulders with a self-congratulatory air. Currently, there are riots occurring in the Countdom of Hyde. That's rough, thought Sabash, sympathizing with Jint, though he figured that it was only natural Jint had to face the various irksome obligations that came with reigning over a territory nation now that he was an active grandee. Jint's case was special, however, and deserving of his sympathy in one respect. After all, the young man's father had acted irresponsibly when he himself became a grandee despite having only one child. That one child didn't have much of a choice. "So we're to intimidate the land world?" asked Roriak, ship commander of the Surkab. He was one of the squadron's 2 senior ship commanders. "I think it's common sense to assume that's what they expect from us." "Then there are no specific orders to do so?" he asked. "It wouldn't be an ulterior reason otherwise." "But does the Countdom of Hyde have all the facilities we'll need?" "From a cursory search, the system doesn't even have proper fuel resupply," said Ser Both, ship commander of the Limcob. "Oh, we can't complain about that," said Ados Raiwa. "These raid ships won't always be fighting on battlefields with lots of facilities. In fact, we should probably think of places without such facilities as better for training exercises." "Though that's just my opinion," said Ados Raiwa. "But we don't have a supply corps accompanying us." Only an incompetent commander would ever send out a trample blitz squadron without a supply corps, she replied. It's not impossible, you know. Coming under an incompetent commander. Besides, even a competent one might be compelled to issue utterly daft commands from time to time. Getting forced into such a hopeless situation would have to be the work of an incompetent commander of higher rank. Please, let's drop this topic, Vice Hecto Commander Sir both. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. Planar space is vast. There's no way we can grasp every possible battlefield. Even if every Commodore were perfect, a seam can open unexpectedly. And I don't think for a microsecond that every Commodore is, in fact, perfect at all. So long as it's an order from above, we can't argue against it, nodded Sir both begrudgingly. Exactly. Anyone else want to complain? Asked Ados Ryua. Her tone admitted no backtalk, but it wasn't too hard to tell she herself was hiding how dissatisfied she was with their orders. No complaints? Then let me split the squadron into two, the red team and the blue team. The blue team will be headed by me. The red I give to you, Waryua. Roger, said Waryua. You and I are now enemy commanders, she said. We each command half of the squadron. I've already selected which ships will be on each team. I grant Hecto Commander Waryua the right to choose which route each team will travel down. Aren't we already enemies, ma'am? Waryua pointed out. I don't need to be taking orders from you, Kilo Commander. You're the enemy. I like that personality of yours, Hecto Commander, she said, putting a white hand on her forehead. I have a leather sandbag. Whenever I'm irritated, I give it a punch or two and let off a tiny bit of steam. I'm going to change that punching bag's name to yours. Thank you very much, said Waryua. Incidentally, what is your favored punching bag's current name? This may be a confidential line, but I couldn't divulge such a secret. In any case, let me amend my statement. You and I will be enemies shortly. As of now, you're still my subordinate. Got it. Roger that. Now then, I choose the clockwise route. Very well. Now remember, the objective of the exercise is to take and maintain control over the Hyde portal. The code to suspend the exercise will be the following phrase: True solar flames are blue. If you receive the message, True solar flames are blue, through the Camrinic crypto mode, you will then revert to the original command structure immediately. Is that clear? Yes, ma'am, Waryua nodded. This confidential line is now the line for the blue team. That means that the ships excluded from this line belong to the red team. Now then, off we go. From this second onward, you and I are enemies, Hecto Commander Waryua. Yes, ma'am. He nearly saluted before stopping himself with a strained smirk. Then, the video of 6 of the ship commanders' window screens, including Waryua's, ceased to transmit. I suppose this makes me a member of the blue team. Sabash didn't feel strongly one way or the other about that. He didn't know Hecto Commander Waryua well enough. Besides, this was just an exercise in the end. And he'd have to follow Kilo Commander Ados Ryua's command baton where it counted, too. Now then, we're headed for the Elish portal in a single column at maximum combat acceleration. Go to your respective bridges and issue your orders. Samson was in the Shiruher Flotilla Lessee's office of the supply ship Akrik Nada. The planar space map on the floor of the office was showing 40 or more space-time bubbles. Each of the bubbles contained only a single ship. Space-time bubbles had a critical mass, and the ships that comprised the Bohr flotilla were so huge they only barely skirted below that limit. Paper cup in hand, Samson gazed at the map. The flotilla was sailing smoothly. Too smoothly. The man was bored. Mechanic star pilots were usually needed as specialists of temporary repairs. When voyages were proceeding without a hitch, he had no role to play. Moreover, he was just aboard ship to serve as the Count of Hyde's proxy. Each of those ships already had an inspector-supervisor of its own. If issues did arise, they would deal with them. Worse yet, while those inspector-supervisors were in the reserves, they were still mechanic star pilots in rank, with quite a few outranking him. He heard the sound of footsteps behind him. Samson may not have had Frocross, but he could tell who it was from the sound. He'd known Pavarua for long enough now. He was more than familiar with his subordinate's mannerisms. I really can't stand this boredom thing, grumbled Samson. I'm the kind of guy who always needs to be doing something. Don't complain, said Pavarua. You were plenty busy before. Not to mention the reams of work that are waiting for you once we get there. Why don't you think of this as a chance to smell the roses? Guess you've got a point, nodded Samson on a bitter note. Samson had been a busy beaver up until the flotilla took off. It was his job to gather the materials and the personnel necessary to construct and maintain both the antimatter fuel factories that were to encircle Hyde's sun and the refueling stations that were to be established on the gas planet apparently named Bergwit. It didn't take too much doing to secure the materials. The Empire fervently desired for the Kingdom of Hyde to become a stable strategic base and spared no effort cooperating to make that happen. In fact, Samson hadn't needed to do much of anything on that front. The Star Forces provided as many as 20 mobile antimatter fuel factories, which were perfectly functional, if old. Plus, he was able to purchase any other materials from the comfort of his room at the inn using his wrist gear, and on a preferential basis at that. It was the people that were the problem. The labor market at the imperial capital was a seller's market of unprecedented proportions. Societal analysts had determined that this was the point in time when supply and demand were most imbalanced. Since the pre-war years, imperial citizens were experienced technicians in all sorts of fields and were therefore in great demand. Meanwhile, the imperial citizens who'd been trained in large numbers since after the war began were starting to spill out of the military, but they couldn't exactly be called rich and experienced just yet. Collecting servant vassals through public recruitment was never going to cut it, forcing Samson to pull all the strings he could to gather the folks they needed. Tinkering with machines was a great joy in life, and his hobby had turned into a job. But his work at the capital was different from what he was accustomed to. He'd endured, thinking he'd employ workers for his future farm, but his new mission had exhausted him utterly. Upon turning to face Pavarua at last, Samson noticed his subordinate was holding a glass. He grabbed him by the arm to sniff the aroma of its contents. It smelled of wormwood and alcohol. "Are you drinking on the job?" admonished Samson. "I'm not drinking just yet. I don't smell of alcohol myself, see? Then you were planning to have your fill starting now. And here, of all places. Aren't you drinking, too, Inspector Supervisor?" "Yeah, tea." Samson held out his cup. "Yerg, what is this stuff?" said Pavarua, after sniffing the way Samson had. "Maxilon tea. I've taken a strange liking to it recently." "That is strange," Pavarua concurred. "But never mind that stuff. How about a little of this?" Like magic, a bottle and a second glass appeared in Pavarua's hands. "I'm on the clock, my friend," said Samson. "Didn't you say you were bored?" "I was, of course. That's what work usually is. Boring. Not that it's impossible to have fun at work. You don't have to pull a face like you're chewing on a fistful of coffee beans, Inspector Supervisor. The work that's waiting for you on the flip side is the kind you love. You know, shouting at your poor, pathetic subordinates, kicking them in the backside, etc. I have never kicked a subordinate." Funnily enough, Pavarua's words of consolation failed to lift his heart. "What really?" Pavarua gently pressed the glass in his direction. "On my home planet, if you take care not to break any bones, we don't call it a kick," he explained, accepting the glass. "Once, when I was under pressure, I used my toes to catch the attention of a dimwit, but I didn't kick him." "I see," said Pavarua, pouring booze with a knowing grin. "It's true that if you hadn't aroused his attention, neither him nor me nor you would be of this universe. I do think you could have been a bit gentler about it." "You think I had that kind of time? My life was on the line, too. Are you saying you didn't have fun, sir?" "Oh, Pavarua, my lad, don't misjudge me. I'm actually a very gentle man at heart. Would I ever lay a hand on another soul, or do something that could be misinterpreted as such?" "You're not angry, are you, Inspector Supervisor?" asked Pavarua, a worried look on his face. "Why would I be angry? It's not like anyone's insulted my cooking. I could never insult your cooking if I wanted to. The meals you made me all those times were great. Oh, that reminds me, I have to warn my new colleagues never to speak ill of the meals you cook. Don't. I like it when people give their honest opinions. Complimenting me out of obligation won't make me any happier. But you said you'd get angry if your food was insulted, didn't you? If somebody tells me my cooking tastes bad, they are insulting something, but it ain't the food. What are they insulting then? Also, What do we toast to? The countdown of Hyde, obviously, the system of strange and bizarre creatures. Here's hoping at least one species makes for some good booze. They clinked. And to answer your question, they're insulting their own defective taste buds. Gotcha. Pavarua chugged and mumbled to himself, glad I left the military. I'd never be able to stand above subordinates, not while I'm lacking your tremendous self-confidence, Inspector Supervisor. And I have a bad habit of viewing myself objectively, so I'm just not suited to rising in the Star Forces ranks. Actually, forget the Star Forces, I might not ever see a promotion anywhere. Yep, said Samson, drinking down his glass. I was kind of hoping you'd argue against that, said Pavarua, visibly wounded even as he poured Samson some more. Argue against that? Why would I do that? You want me to say, be more confident in yourself, or 3 days, and you'll know the ropes of being a commander. I don't want you going back to the Star Forces. You know how hard it is to come by a subordinate like you? Look, with you, I don't need to give you a love tap with my toes to get your attention, and you can handle the usual stuff fairly easily. It's just that you tend to be slow to make decisions, so it'd be dangerous to make you a superior officer. And with the Star Forces in their current state, you probably would have made it to Inspector Supervisor rank on some small ship soon enough. So by retiring from service, you've avoided a disaster. Please, could you stick to either praising me or disparaging me, but not both? Hey, pal, I'm nothing if not consistent. You certainly are. Let me tell you, being an Inspector Supervisor isn't just bossing people around. You've also got to take care of the folks with the blue hair. Are you referring to the Baranu? Said Pavarua, looking distinctly skeptical. You took care of them, Inspector Supervisor? I seem to recall one time when I saluted Vanguard Star Pilot Sawbash by your quarters, only to find he was carrying your dead drunk form. Is that what you call taking care of someone on your home planet, sir? Because on mine, it's the opposite. Just as Samson was about to retort, somebody entered the office. Aw crap, said Samson, ducking his head. I can't stand that woman. I see, said Pavarua, positively delighted. The ship Her Highness the Royal Princess was on was attacked. How can you be so relaxed? Accosted Selnai. And could that be alcohol I'm seeing? Unlike the Av, you can get drunk, Ruher, Flotilla Lassie. Samson didn't mind getting treated like some pale shadow of an Av. There wasn't the faintest fiber of him that bought into the delusion that he was an Av in anything but name. The laws of the Empire could claim what they wanted. He was a proud man of Midgrat. That's not entirely correct, said Samson, ignoring the latter of the two questions. The ship that got attacked was the one that was going to be the manor for the House of Hyde. But the captain wasn't on that ship. I don't know who this captain is, but what do they have to do with Fee Lartner? She pressed. Ah, said Samson, smiling awkwardly, Fee Lartner is the captain. I've gotten so used to calling Her Highness by her military title. Even from just his recent, limited interactions with her, he could sense the sheer reverence this woman held for Lafier, so he braced himself to get shouted at for being too familiar when referring to royalty. But it seemed Selnai had the common sense not to push her preferences on others. I'm just glad Her Highness is okay. That is, if what you say is true. All the same, this is a matter of grave concern, is it not? It's just as you say, said Samson sincerely. Now there was the possibility they couldn't enter the Countdom of Hyde. In all likelihood, they'd end up getting stuck in the system right before Hyde, this Vorlash Countdom or some such. And wasting hours and days doing nothing would eat into their funds. If they didn't play this right, even payments toward the salaries of the servant vassals would get affected. Yet another job I don't know my way around, thought Samson, disheartened. On the whole, late pay wasn't a thing in the Star Forces. Even if it had happened, it would have been incumbent on Samson to stand for his NCC subordinates and denounce his superiors. This was different, though. Even as the head vassal, he didn't have the heart to pillory Jint. He'd probably end up taking the brunt of the vassal's slings and arrows defending him. And how could he possibly get through it all without an occasional pint? Samson thrust his empty glass at Pavarua. Selnai raised her eyebrows, but didn't bring it up. Shouldn't we be raising our speed? She asked. What for? Said Samson readily, having anticipated that question. You're not saying you want to rush toward Fee Lartner as fast as physically possible, are you? I am, she nodded. What good would that do, he nearly said, but he bottled that up and left it at, Either way, the flotilla is already sailing at max speed. We can't fly any faster. Then I suppose I have to bear it, she said, looking truly crestfallen. If only our ship had planar space navigation functionality, then I'd have liked to rush over right away. Selnai Limited owned a lander-pilotable antimatter fuel tank inspection ship, also named the Selnai, but it, of course, lacked that functionality. That ship was packed somewhere in the hold of the ship, the Akrik Nada. Oh, I know, she said, and Samson steeled himself for the needless toil that was sure to follow that statement. How about we organize a guard garrison? A guard garrison? Samson was taken aback. In the domain I used to be part of, the vassals all received minimal military training. I mean, we were all women, but this flotilla has a lot of former soldiers, including you, sir. Please, enough, he said, promptly rejecting the notion. According to our intel, the land army of the Three Nations Alliance is still on the planet of Martinu. A thrown-together unit isn't going to help. Given how she'd asserted her own experience, he figured she might volunteer for the guard garrison herself, only she'd want to organize a unit of guards specifically for the princess, not for the Kingdom of Hyde. Sure enough. I'm not saying we gain total control over a land world, said Selnai, lips pouting. I just want to protect Filartner and Lonnie Dryor. There's already a guard unit for that. It wasn't a standing unit, but it would defend the facilities of the House of Hyde, which, for the foreseeable future, amounted to the Count's manor and the antimatter fuel factories. Wow, she said, her face lighting up. In that case, kindly add me to that unit. It's our responsibility to protect Her Highness the Royal Princess. I'm afraid we aren't the ones in charge of guarding Filartner, he said, feeling weird every time he used that title. We aren't bodyguards. At the end of the day, we're here to defend the facilities of the Count's house. I understand that. But as long as Filartner is with Lonnie Dryor, is it not the duty of the Count's house to safeguard Her Highness? I guess that's true. In that case, Samson wondered how long this unproductive conversation would last, but at the same time, he was enjoying wrestling with this irrationality. It was a lifesaver on this otherwise boring voyage. There was also the fact that Selnai's speech sounded rather like some fanciful background music. Her Baranu had a lyrical, melodic accent to it. Her mother tongue must have been rich in intonation. Sasmin would have liked to see whether the background music Selnai was providing him went well with his drink, but alas, his wrist gear chose that time to beep. Sorry, just a sec, he said, tasting both relief and disappointment. This is Samson speaking. Flotilla Lessee, came the voice of the Drokia Bor, Flotilla Communications Officer. A conveyance ship is approaching. It was an oft-heard notification. While the volume of traffic was low, this was the only major space route in the Elish monarchy. Do we know what it belongs to? To the raid ship Flickob of Tramplblitz Squadron 1, sir. It seems they're currently engaged in the task of advanced coordination. Raid ship? Tramplblitz Squadron 1? When they come out with those? I don't know either, sir. All we know is the squadron it belongs to. The conveyance ship will merge with this ship's space-time in 92 minutes, so we'll learn more then. Looking forward to it. Samson dropped the call. Now I can make her go away. Did you hear that? It appears a mighty Star Forces armada is headed towards the Kingdom of Hyde, shrouded though it is in clouds of darkness. We're just a collective of engineers. We'd be hard-pressed to be the heroes of some adventure story. As long as the Empire's on the job, then there's no place for us to intervene. Yes, of course, she bowed, frowning for some reason. Sorry for intruding. Please, don't let me put a hamper on your little drinking party. After she left, Samson put the question to Pavarua. Did I offend her somehow? Inspector Supervisor, he said icily, despite drinking more himself. Whenever you say stuff you don't mean, your acting is always so overblown. You could stand to take it down a notch, or at least, drop all the mighty modifiers.